All right, it's time to begin. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to our webinar, Navigating Google Consent Mode version 2, How Should I Prepare? I'm Chetna, Associate PM at CookieYes, and I'm delighted to be your host for this session. Today, we have got two awesome guest speakers. We have Jaylen Baca, who is a Global Product Solution Lead and the Global Regulatory Product Development at Google. And we have Eunice Wells, who is the Head of Ads Privacy, User, and Regulatory at Google. We are absolutely thrilled to have you both here with us today to shed light on this crucial topic. So, without further ado, let's dive straight in. First, let me give a quick overview of the topic. Consent Mode is actually a tool developed by Google that allows websites to communicate their visitors' cookie consent status to Google. So, based on what your website visitor chooses as their setting on your cookie banner, the Google tags will adjust their behavior to respect your visitors' preferences. And as you all may already know, Consent Mode is not something new to us. It was introduced back in 2020. But we are seeing renewed chatter about it because Google has updated it to a new version, Consent Mode version 2. And as of March 2024, Google is mandating the adoption of Consent Mode version 2 for all websites with visitors from European Economic Area and the United Kingdom. Yes, there's a lot going on. So in the next hour, we'll discuss how Consent Mode works, how the new version is different, why Google is making it mandatory, and finally, of course, the important question you might be asking us, how do we go about implementing this? And who could be better to guide us through all of this than our fantastic guest speakers from Google? So over to you, Eunice.
Thank you so much for that. If you could progress to the next slide, thanks. So before we delve into the details, I think it's important to take a minute and step back and sort of set the context and the stage a little bit. 2024 we're really at a pivotal moment for the digital advertising ecosystem. So on the one hand, we have advances in AI, innovations in this space, really creating new opportunities for marketers. But on the other hand, we also have a lot of technology and platform changes, including the deprecation of third-party cookies and sort of generally identifiers sort of going away. So coupled with the end user and the, sort of the digital ads ecosystem consumer becoming more and more savvy, I think users are expecting a greater level of control and transparency over how their data is being sort of used and flowing through the system. So I understand the position that the entire industry is in. As a marketer, I'm sure you're being asked to deliver the same, if not better, results and performance quarter after quarter amidst all these vast sort of technological and platform changes that we're going through. So in order to help you succeed in this new dynamic landscape, you really need to invest right now in durable advertising solutions and services that will deliver this type of growth, all the while sort of honoring user choice, transparency, and privacy as we progress. So next slide, please. What I see as the key to taking advantage of these new opportunities is really having high quality consented data. You might have heard, in years past, first party data that, is going to be the core to unlocking everything, but really not all first party data is considered of high quality. For us, it's really consented data that really meets the mark of these user privacy expectations. So when used together, these components will not only help you sort of make decisions with confidence as you move along your marketing objectives, but they are the fuel that sort of powers the AI, which is really going to be delivering that long-term performance for your business as we move forward. So investing here in the right strategy and investing now for the future is really where I see sort of this inflection point is. Next slide. So again, future is consented, the future is first-party data, and the future is modeled, especially when all of these deterministic identifiers are sort of going away with third-party cookie deprecation and all of the platform changes that we have seen thus far. So, in order to do this, really, evaluating the impact of your marketing spend begins and ends here. So we really have to set the foundation here and now so that our marketing and objectives are durable into the future. Next slide. I think what we can think about, though, as we move into this dynamic environment are three really main drivers for these changes. So when I first started delivering these talks for Google in 2022, I used to say that about a little over half the world's population is covered under a modern privacy regulation. Today in 2024, that sort of 50% is now at over 70%. So that tells me that the trend is only growing and proliferating across the globe. I imagine if we do this webinar next year, that number might also change. So we have regulatory changes. What's fueling regulatory changes are really user expectations. So users, consumers, the average consumer is very digitally savvy. We are talking about the proliferation and the expansion of Gen Z, who's sort of grown up with all of these modern digital tools. And with savviness, I think you also have rising expectations. Users are demanding more control and transparency, and their privacy expectations are growing, which I think is fueling these regulatory changes. And then, of course, on the private sector side, there are vast technological changes, including innovations in AI, which are sort of fueling a lot of this dynamic environment that we find ourselves in today. So next slide. Obviously, we have major changes coming on the horizon, but I think it's useful to think about sort of the historical events that sort of led us here. We have really in the EEA, the passage of the e-privacy directive way back in 2002. Of course, landmark GDPR, who doesn't remember when that passed and how that impacted all of the ways that we've conducted business. Here in the States, we have the California, the CCPA, which is sort of like, I want to say, the major privacy regulation that governs in the United States. And we have a variety of state level regs being also passed as well. To be determined on whether a comprehensive federal legislation will be passed this year, but it's something I think that is just around the corner. And then, of course, we had the Digital Markets Act coming into force just a few weeks ago in the EEA. Along those lines, we've had some really interesting platform changes. I'm sure many of you, if you have done any digital advertising in the apps arena, you're probably intricately aware of the changes that Apple has made with the ATT framework. And then, of course, here at Google, Android and Chrome have announced sort of the privacy sandbox initiatives in concert with the deprecation of the third-party cookie, which we imagine to be going to be 100% by the end of 2024. So really, all this is to say that there's a lot of changes here on the horizon. We know this now. I understand that fundamentally marketers are working sort of quarter over quarter. However, we have to start thinking longer term because these changes are on the horizon and you don't want to be caught inside that quarter when these changes occur. You want to invest in them now. So 2024, we really see as an inflection point for marketers where your marketing and measurement will degrade, will lose effectiveness if you don't take action now to invest for the durable future. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jaylen, who's going to be talking about doing a deeper dive on consent mode.
Thank you, Eunice. Hello, everyone. Jaylen Baca here. As was previously mentioned, it's quite a busy year in terms of consent and changes around regulation and policy. What actions need to be taken? Well, adopt consent mode. Let's start with what is consent mode. Consent mode helps advertisers properly communicate consent signals to help respect the user's choice and enable comprehensive measurement and modeling. It allows advertisers and marketers to pass robust and auditable opt-in and user consent signals to Google. Earlier in November, an upgrade was actually released to the consent mode API to make it easier to pass consent signals for personalized advertising to Google. In particular for customers in the EEA, European Economic Area traffic, this upgrade will be required to preserve online audience functionalities with Google's associated products. Consent mode also provides you a more comprehensive measurement solution by giving you insight into a number of consented and unconsented users. With this information, it can help identify lost conversions from signal loss and conversion modeling. On average, we're seeing about 65% in terms of ad click to conversion journeys being modeled through consent mode. Next slide, please. So this is what consent mode looks like. Here you'll see a code snippet used to add consent mode to GTag. Consent mode will set the default user consent to denied in the EA area. With a basic implementation of consent mode, tags and SDKs do not fire and no data is shared with Google. While the advanced consent mode solution will adjust Google's tags and SDK behaviors to respect user consent choices. This is a key difference between the two functionalities. And then notably, if a user denies consent, tags will stay blocked, most importantly. Next slide, please. What is changing compared between version 2 and version 1 in consent mode? Well, we're adding two specific parameters to version 2.0, ads underscore user underscore data and ad underscore personalization. As of this month, the parameters required will already be implemented via that product. So as long as the product is implemented, you'll receive this new functionality. Next slide, please. And so these are the key steps that any advertiser needs to take that we're recommending from Google. Step 1, ensure you're collecting valid user consent for European users. Please note that this is not a new requirement. We've actually had this as associated with our EU user consent policies since 2019, and it reflects the requirements of the GDPR and e-privacy directive in the EU. Next, collect valid user consent via a CMP. Oh, apologies, back one slide. Next is in the next step. To collect valid user consent, get help from our partners and CMP partners here today. And then make sure you respect the end user consent choices required by Google's existing EU user consent policy. Step 2, implement consent mode for audience use cases to automatically pass consented signals to Google advertising platforms in real time. Step 3, we recommend migrating to Google Analytics 4. This will help maintain your remarketing, audience, and conversion export lists and bidding optimization. We have more resources online and many blog posts, so please feel free to see our Help Center articles for more information. And then lastly, step 4, upgrade to the latest version of Google Ads APIs and SDKs to pass user consent signals to Google. As a fallback option for customers that do manual uploads of data, they will have to complete a consent attestation within the product UI/GUI. Next slide, please. And then finally, advertisers must obtain and respect the end user's consent. And previously mentioned, this is not anything new. And we recommend that you work with our CMP partners like CookieYes to effectively get and communicate end user consent choices. And with that, I'll pass it back over.
That was truly insightful, Eunice and Jaylen. You have provided us with valuable perspectives. Now, coming to the partnership between CookieYes and Google. CookieYes is an official Google certified CMP partner, meaning we have seamless integration with the Google consent mode. We have been working with Google since 2023 to bring version 2 to our platform, and we were able to support GCM version 2 from December 2023. So by using the CookieYes platform, you can now leverage consent mode version 2 to better manage user consent across your Google tags. Now let's take a look at how we support GCM on CookieYes. We have enabled GCM by default for all our users on our web app. So if you are an existing user, you can go to advanced settings on your CookieYes web app and see that we have enabled Google consent mode. In case you don't see this enabled on an older version of CookieYes, you can simply go to this page and just toggle the switch on, and that's it. The changes will be saved automatically. So if you are a website owner or publisher without a cookie banner or not yet utilizing a consent management platform, then I'd say it's high time to consider implementing one. Okay, moving on to the implementation part. There are two types of implementation for Google Consent Mode. One is via Google Tag Manager, GTM, and secondly via a custom script. So to implement CookieYes with Google Tag Manager, you'll first need to set up Google Tag Manager for your website. Once you do that, you should be able to create a new tag and add the CookieYes template to your workspace. In fact, there are a couple more steps involved in configuring this. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we won't be able to cover the step-by-step details. So I'll go ahead and drop all the resources you need to set it up in the Zoom chat. Okay, so to all website owners out there who are looking to implement Google Consent Mode, depending on your specific use case, you can refer to the appropriate documentation and proceed with the GCM implementation accordingly. And if you have any questions about GCM implementation, feel free to drop an email to support@cookieyes.com, and we are here to assist you with any inquiries you may have. So moving on to the second method of implementing GCM, which involves using a custom script. You can find the custom script in the documentation link we provided. You'll have to copy the script and paste it above the GTM script and CookieYes script on your website source code. And once again, I'd like to emphasize that all the details can be found in the documentation links that I've dropped into the Zoom chat. Yeah, that covers what we set out to do, and I hope you have saved these links to your notes for future reference. Unfortunately, we won't be able to host a live Q&A session this time. However, we have compiled the most common questions that many of our users have asked us regarding Google Consent Mode and its recent updates. So I hope our speakers can address these questions. So going to the first question, in what way does Transparency and Consent Framework, TCF version 2.2 compliance intersect with Google Consent Mode?
Yes. So, okay, is my sound? Is my sound okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. The Google Consent Mode and the IAB TCF version 2.2 are really two separate frameworks, but both of them allow advertisers and publishers for the TCF side to communicate consent signals. So there are a number of differences between Google Consent Mode and the IAB TCF 2.2, but really it is up to our advertisers to decide which consent solution that is right for them. To obtain consent from their EEA users, comply with their EU user consent policy. Consent mode is just simply an alternative to TCF implementation. But again, it's really up to the advertiser to determine which solution meets their own compliance needs better. So I would say that they don't necessarily intersect. They are just two different ways that advertisers can send consent signals.
Okay, going to the second question, what's the difference between basic and advanced consent mode?
So I can take this one. Basically,
Okay.
advanced, as previously mentioned, it adjusts Google tags and SDK behaviors to respect the choices that the user has made, the consented choices. For the basic version, it will solely unblock the Google tag and SDK behavior when consent is granted, versus that modifying the specific behavior. And then at the end of the day, it's up to the advertiser to decide between the two, which best solution works for them. But this is, both of them are compliant in their approach.
Okay. And the third question, how does consent mode affect remarketing?
So for campaigns targeting users in the EEA, consent mode allows you to maintain your remarketing features. So those advertisers post March 6, 2024, so that was exactly 20 days ago, those advertisers who are not integrated with consent mode and not passing us those two consent signals, your remarketing list will begin to degrade. So those remarketing won't be available to you anymore. Existing lists say that if you had uploaded them March 5th, they will continue until those lists expire, but any new lists updated post March 6th will not work.
Hello?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, so
Yeah.
any lists, marketing lists uploaded that is not, if you're not integrated with consent mode, you're not sending us the consent parameters, your marketing list uploaded post March 6th will not work.
Cool. And finally, is it necessary to update privacy policy after implementing Google Consent Mode?
So I can take this one as well. So unfortunately, we can't provide specific legal guidance or advice. We do recommend, however, their advertisers consult both their legal and their compliance teams, and then also utilize the resources that we've posted online as well to determine what, if any, changes need to be made to those privacy policies.
Okay, so that brings us to an end. So thank you everyone for joining us today and participating in this webinar on navigating Google Consent Mode version 2. We hope you found this session useful and gained a deeper understanding of how to implement and leverage GCM along with CookieYes to better manage your user consents. And on behalf of the CookieYes team, I extend our heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to our guest speakers, Jaylen Baca and Eunice Wells, for joining us. I would say your contributions have truly enriched our discussion. I'd like to take a moment to thank the growth team at CookieYes for their efforts in organizing this event. And once again, if you have any additional questions or require further assistance, feel free to reach out to us. Our support specialists at CookieYes are always here, ready to help you navigate through any challenges you may have along the way. So, okay, let's wrap it up then. Once again, thank you everyone and goodbye.